Welcome to White Pill Radio, the roughly every other episode version of Theology on Air, which is an outgrowth of Theology by the Pint, which is an amazing ministry in Houston that if you haven't appeared at in person, you need to do, and you need to learn more about Theology by the Pint by going to, you'll never guess, theologybythepint.org, theologybythepint.org. Learn more about our events coming up and what we're about and who our leadership team is and how you can give to support this ad-free podcast. Our only ad is asking you for money. So, I mean, like, if you give, we can maybe take that ad out. Anyway, thank you for listening. White Pill Radio, we do because we can't cover everything in our live events. So we need more podcast time to talk about current events from a Christian worldview. So I like to say that this is post-apologetic, ultimately hopeful, applied theology that does look at current events from a Christian worldview. And I also like to say that this is blessed talk, but not happy talk. So we do the real deal here. We dive into real issues, and sometimes we probably get too political. So we're going to always try to keep things, worldview related. So we'll talk about some politics, some goings on in the world, but related to theological questions, like what we should be involved in and what we should not. So I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. I'm joined by the Grand Poobah
Hey
of
guys.
Theology by the Pint.
Sarah Stone. I'm the executive director for Theology by the Pint. And we have a newbie today.
Yes, I'm Brandon Baca. I'm a missions pastor in Fort Bend County at the Bridge Fellowship.
Woo-hoo.
Cool. Yeah.
And I'm Ken. I'm an accountant.
All
Awesome.
right.
Welcome.
Well,
You've been on enough that I have your stuff memorized. You always say you're an accountant. At the end, you say, I'm not telling you fools where I work.
no,
There you go.
jokers. He says
Oh,
jokers.
jokers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he always says peace, which has a triple meaning.
It's the name of my wife. She's beautiful.
Oh.
All right. Well, enough with that. Enough with that.
Smushy stuff.
Yeah.
It's making Evan uncomfortable.
But okay, so one of the things that's happened lately are these ICE raids, immigration enforcement, etc. So
No kings. is
and
the
no
slogan.
Yeah.
kings, kind of all, plus the Israel protests. They all kind of I get all their protests confused.
There's a lot of things to protest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us
Brandon,
more.
this was
So
happening.
there was an article in the Associated Press that I thought was really interesting. It's about faith leaders opposing the ICE raids with resistance in relation to the No Kings protests that were coming up, and I began to think, what is the response of a faith leader in the midst of what's happening in our context, culturally, politically, all that? How do you stand up for justice? How do you stand up for what you currently believe in, and how do you do that in the way of Jesus? And so I thought this was a really great article, and some ways challenging on all sides of the equation. I thought these quotes really stood out to me. There's a rabbi that said, the moral message is clear. We do not accept the world. And remember, this is a rabbi speaking, so we do not accept the world as it is. We respond to cruelty with courage, to hatred with love. And I thought, that's a really interesting thing to think about in my own life. But as a church, as faith leaders, are we okay with protests in a nonviolent way, peaceful protests, or are we just okay with depending on what they stand for? And then.
Yes.
What do they stand for?
Yeah, I was like, the second one.
And I think that's the other question is you have these protests and we kind of tack on additional things that we want to protest or we want additional messaging, so it becomes convoluted and confusing about what are we standing for. And in that quote of, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. But if you don't stand for anything, you fall.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like, what does that all look like? So there's a reverend says, that nonviolent resistance is a core belief of her congregation. She's from New York City, in the article, and which has been feeding and helping newly arrived immigrants and demonstrating to support them. So the demonstration of these protests is supporting immigrants, but also acting and feeding and supplying, basic needs for immigrants.
Which, by the way, are two different things.
Right. And
Like,
so then
helping them is different than protesting on the streets.
Right. Well, sure. But in a way, she said, we're like Jesus, nonviolent. And I thought, okay, so now here we go. We're bringing Christ into this. So what does it look like to be Jesus in the town square and facing these certain issues from a moral and
Well, I think we all agree with
Christian
nonviolent
standpoint.
protest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's off the table. Nobody disagrees with that. I think there's disagreement about whether or not a non-citizen has the right to be in any country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't have the right to be
And
in
that's
Mexico.
specifically what this article was about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was about
I
well.
guess.
It was in
Where was it?
relation to. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Not just immigrants, but undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Undocumented.
It's about religious figures saying that undocumented immigrants have what? A moral right to be in America, so therefore ICE should not take them out of this country, so therefore we are going to nonviolently protest ICE doing their job?
I mean, no, it was a little bit more about the fact of the way in which we're acting in the process. Are we skirting the due process by just running in and
Gotcha.
pulling people out and saying you're here illegally, we're taking you? And
That's the due process.
But it's the process. There's
What
a
is due
court.
process?
There's a court system, right? There's a ruling that takes place that then does that. But it seems, according to the article, it's violent in a way in which that is happening. And so that was the question, first of all. It's not that it shouldn't or should or shouldn't happen. It's the way in which it's happening.
Okay, I have two questions for you. The first is you said something about like Jesus. When we look at the Bible, I can see Jesus if he were here today in the flesh and bone. I could see him feeding immigrants, helping them, and that kind of thing. I actually don't see him non-violently protesting. I think he has better things to do than going out in the street and yelling "No Kings." So my question for you is, as a faith leader, did you go to the No Kings
I did
protest
not.
here?
I did
Would
not.
you?
You know, I would want to know more about that. And
Yeah.
I think that, as a faith leader, that's what's challenging.
Yeah.
Is where do you stand in the midst of all of these issues? And if you take one side, that means that you're opposing this other side.
Well, it
And
also
so
means that you're
the
taking on all these other
right. And so,
campaigns.
we have friends that went to the rally, and several people, through social media, whatever, had questions like, "What are you actually protesting?"
Right.
And I think that's the other piece of the puzzle. It needs to be clear. The messaging needs to be clear about what you are protesting. Now, I think it's okay. I mean, if we think about that, we are a country that the argument is we need to respect our leaders. We need to, authority, people that are in authority, and there's scriptures associated with that, how we treat that. I get that, but we're also a country that vote people into these places, and they're subject to that vote, and we have a voice, and so we're part of that authority in some ways. If you vote,
That was
which I do,
a jab
which
at
is
Ken.
great.
Well, not everyone does.
So let's
So
talk about it, But I
He's gonna
think,
wear you down.
but to say that Jesus had better things to do than non-violently protest, I think he did that. I think he did that when he went into the tabernacle and said certain things. He read out of that and said, "Right here today, this is happening in your midst." I think when he said, "You brood of viper," I think when there were conversations against the ruling authority of that day within that culture, he did that. But he
that's
didn't
like
do it-
his
you could
version.
also
but he
say
didn't do it
violently.
violently.
Sure.
Yes,
Well,
he
he
did.
also did.
Well, he
I guess
also-
he cleaned the
He
temple
twice-
out
twice
violently,
went to
but,
the temple.
but he was
Property?
perfect too. So I think
I would,
that's a
I
hard
would
thing
argue
to-
crucifixion is violent, and he used that as well.
Ooh, interesting.
Well,
That's
yeah,
a
he
perfect
knows
example
that-
of
knowing
a
that it would
violent
take
protest,
place.
but he was nonviolent. One interesting thing that I always point out every time the turning of the tables at the temple comes up is John's gospel is the only one that mentions the flagella, the leather cord, right? And it is also, and I don't think this is by accident, the only one that mentions driving out the sheep and the oxen, right? At best, Jesus is guilty of property damage, right? But it never says that he is using that cord on
People.
the humans, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, right.
John's gospel is the only one that mentions the leather cord, and it's the only one that mentions the sheep and oxen.
So you think he
wanted
was
to
just
point that out.
prodding them out?
Yeah,
with
well,
it,
yeah, how
yeah.
do you get a?
Well,
you use
Yeah,
it.
I actually heard just today, actually, for the first time, that someone argued that Jesus whipped people. I don't know that he whipped people. I
gosh.
think.
Oh, I hear that all the time.
Yeah,
and
I've heard
Oh, I know. I thought it was him just sort of using it as a
Right.
tool of power. Like y'all better get, you know. But here's my
Regardless,
thing.
he was God and he had the moral authority to whip people.
Here's my thing about the whole No Kings
I would argue.
protests. So when I was a little girl, my parents were really into right to life stuff, and I was little, and they took me to protest against abortion. And it was very clear. It was one issue. We believe in the sanctity of life, and we are nonviolently protesting. We walked down the mall in Washington, D.C. I have pictures of me holding a little sign, like something about life. That is very clear. The No Kings protest felt like, and I gave y'all a couple pictures of some pastor friends of mine that were there, and you can see people's signs. They've got signs about LGBTQ stuff. One of them was like, "No kings, but yes, queens."
Yeah.
And another one was like, a lady's wearing a keffiyeh, which if you don't live in Houston, that's ridiculous. It's July. I mean, it's June in Houston. It's 1,000 degrees outside. You wear that because that was not a fashion statement. That was a political statement. So now we've got Palestine stuff. We've got LGBTQ stuff.
It was a mixed bag.
No Kings was because Trump had a parade, but also because of immigration, ICE raids. Like, what are we even? It's just a bunch of people that are angry about something. That's where I'm like.
And they were not very well attended and seemed to have essentially no
Well,
effect.
Well,
I think they were actually pretty
1960
dang.
there was a really
they
important.
got
in the
media
suburbs,
coverage.
there
There was a
2,500
really
people in Sugarland.
How many?
2,500 people in
2,500 people? 100
Yeah.
people in Sugarland?
And
Okay.
the Houston
That's
one
a
was pretty
lot.
big. I think the protests were decently sized, but
I mean,
my
I
thing
drove
is,
around and my traffic was never blocked. so.
but real quick, you were talking about whether faith leaders should be involved, and to me, the convoluted message of that protest is such that no, I don't think faith leaders should have been involved in that one. But generally speaking, I think nonviolent protesting against things that are unjust, for sure, faith leaders
Yes,
should be involved
yes.
in.
Well, there was one faith leader that got involved, No King's morning, early in the AM, like very violently.
Oh,
The
really?
Minnesota assassination.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and part of that was
Well, I think that's unclear.
explain.
Well, he had No King's pamphlets in his car, but there's, I think, question as to what his motives were.
Well,
Because, for example, the hit list was prepared probably in November.
With a bunch of pro-life people on it, or sorry, abortion
Right, Planned Parenthood.
providers on it.
In fact,
too.
one of the people shot, the couple that was shot but survived, the
Mm,
male
yeah.
lawmaker, he wasn't even on the list.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of questions about that shooting. I'm not being conspiratorial. I just think
Let's wait until we have more information.
I wouldn't say for sure. I could have the No Kings thing from his point of view could have been like a psyop. But I mean I don't disagree that. I do think there's a broader question of whether or not with like Louis Mangione and some other things, whether we are entering into like assassination culture.
And I say size doesn't matter, right? Like if a protest is okay, like the protest could be huge or small, but it only takes like one or two radical lunatics to do something like Luigi or this pastor guy.
Was he a radical lunatic though? That's
Who?
kind of the question. Luigi Mangione.
You're saying that's
well,
becoming the norm.
I'm asking rhetorically.
I mean,
Because
I read his manifesto.
because in the culture, there's a significant percentage of the people who would say he was not a crazy lunatic. He was doing what was just. He was, murdering one guy for charging too much for insurance is a just, execution of a guilty person to make a political point.
Yeah, I mean, I read
that's what I'm saying. Is assassination culture becoming a thing? It's becoming justified in the minds of a lot of people, millions of Americans. That what he did is not only justified but
Yeah, that's sad.
celebration worthy. Right? Y'all know that. I mean, y'all see that, right?
Yes. No, I'm
Yeah,
on
okay.
your team here.
I mean, and what about 8647? I mean, the former director of the FBI finds it on a beach. What a lame idiot. I mean, come on, dude. Own it. Own it. Like, don't be like I was walking on the
yeah,
beach
like,
and I didn't know what it
found
meant. Yes. Okay.
Jack Posobiec owns his 8646, so
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, own it or don't.
I agree.
Like,
And
don't do this sissy footing,
The difference is when you say 8646, like getting rid of Biden, like was, I think, what pretty much everyone understood that meant. But people did try to kill us, kill Trump, right? Trump says
says it. Trump says Iran shot at him twice. That's interesting.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he was saying they tried to Iran the
Well, there was-
assassins.
Well,
he
Intel.
mixed up the
BB's
assassination plot and the
Bibi did
The
that.
conflict
Bibi
there.
did
That,
Bibi Netanyahu,
There
Prime
are
Minister of
assassins
Israel
in the
the
US.
other day. This was part of the big Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson thing that we'll get into later. But he seemed to conflate, and Ted Cruz admitted this. He conflated the fact that there are Iranians in America trying to assassinate Trump. That led to a rhetorical question about nuking Iran. We'll come back later, perhaps. Then there were two assassination attempts on Trump. And there was a conflation of those two things.
Yeah, that they
And
were-
so Tucker Carlson's point was, if there's not demonstrable proof that Iranians have attempted to assassinate the president, then what Bibi Netanyahu is likely doing is using that as a provocation to goad us into entering the war.
Right.
Basically he's pushing Trump's buttons. Hey, they tried to kill you. You're not going to do anything about it. What are you, yellow? Yellow.
But assassination culture really scares me because it does just take like one unhinged person and
Well, not all of us have Secret Service protection. There's
well,
a
that
lot
too,
of very vulnerable people. I mean, in the media space, and like the what do you call that? When you call the SWAT teams on people, swatting
people.
yeah. I mean that's part of assassination culture as well because people die as a result of swatting raids that are false and stuff.
Okay, so here's my last question on this article then. If the No Kings protests had just been about illegal immigration and the way that we are deporting people, and none of the other stuff had been in there and convoluted, I would love to hear whether you guys as faith leaders or if you'd want your pastor to be involved in that protest.
No.
I say no.
But why? Well, I mean,
Because I don't think I don't think it's unjust what's happening with deportation. So, and I think it's they're being treated like criminals because they have done something criminal so far. Now, I mean, with the
we're offering people $1,000 and a free trip to leave. Right. So, in fact, there's a report that 1 million people have self-deported. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's I don't know how you can track that.
I don't know.
It's probably an estimate, but I mean, there have been hundreds of thousands of arrests. By the way, did you see that in May there were zero, not one, 0 southern border releases? Yeah. 0. Okay. And so we went from hundreds of thousands several years back to 0. I don't know why. I think Trump should get credit for that. I think, but let's tie it, not just to make it political. It is the sworn duty of the person that we elected, who, by the way, ran on a deportation platform.
Yeah,
and
he was pretty clear about that.
Democratic will of the people is that we want them. Polls produce this. The election results. This is what the people want. So, such a religious leader would be going against the will of his own country. Democratically elected president was elected to do that, so I think that would be bad. But also, it is the basic duty of an elected representative to keep his own people safe. That's like job number one. And I think if you can make the case that not only is he making his own countrymen safe, but he is also providing for their economic well-being, which we'll talk about later when we talk about real wage increases, then I think that what are you protesting? You're protesting that ICE people are going into workplaces and arresting people who are illegally here, illegally working, arguably taking jobs from American citizens. What is the immorality here?
And that distinction is where polling gets tricky. It's kind of like the abortion question, right? It's murky around like one or two, like first or second trimester, but like when you get in third trimester, like everyone's against it. And same thing with like this deportation stuff. Criminal deportations, everyone was on board. If somebody has a criminal record here in the U.S., everyone says like kick him out, right? But it is going to like Maria that works at the hotel or the farm workers that work in California. And Trump's even getting pushback from these farmers, that people are starting to get kind of iffy on that. The polls start shifting when you actually specify the different categories of these.
Okay, but the protests. Who are the protests talking about? Are they talking about Maria at the hotel? Because I haven't heard a lot of stories of hotel Marias getting deported yet.
A lot of it is people showing up for that. What was the name of the app that the Biden administration
CBP.
had? Yeah, CBP app. Showing up for their hearing, saying like, hey, my claim for asylum is valid, right? They show up for their hearing to a judge, and then they walk out the back door, and ICE arrests them. The problem is, like, it's really, really hard to find the criminals, and it's so easy to find people that are just, like, showing up to their hearings.
Well,
and
there's
ICE
a couple
is
different kinds of criminals. There's criminals that have done something criminal once they've been here, but there's also the criminality of coming in illegally.
Right. Or people who are criminals in other countries came here.
Okay, 3.
Sure. Yeah. Which is what we talked about due process, right? Like to assume every single Maria or Hector that works in a hotel or a farm is going to be type 1 and 3 criminal and not just type 2, which you mentioned, which is they crossed. They illegally. Said they had when you say illegally, you mean they say they had asylum, but they really don't have a valid claim to asylum, right? That would be crossing illegally. And that's what the CBP1 app is.
Yeah, well, when the word asylum has lost all of its meaning.
So here's the if you've mapped that out and you look at what it takes to become a legal citizen of the United States, how long that takes.
It's not Ellis Island.
So it could be ignorance on some individuals' parts and maybe our part to communicate what it really takes to become a citizen of the United States. It's a land of the free. We're open. We want you to come here. But you get here and you're like, oh, wow, I got to stand in line for 15 years.
Well, what about all the people
So
who
I'm
did
waiting.
stand in? What about all the people who did stand in line for 15 years?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and so
I get
then other people
what
come
I'm
in, they
saying
just
is
jump the border.
They
And by the
stood
way,
in line. I was in a small group with an individual that stood in line for 10 years and that was Polish. And so she finally got, was she here illegally? Maybe.
Hey guys, Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible. So we've crunched the numbers. And if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much. And now back to our show.
But at the end of the day,
I thought you said she stood in line for 10 years.
well,
Wasn't she going through the process?
she was going through
So
the
she was
process,
here-
but she was here in the U.S. waiting.
I want to answer this question and the
Yeah,
pastor question at the same
Do you
time.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
but
so,
there's there's a lot of people in the U.S. who are here legally while they're going through the process.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
Yeah.
I want to answer this question. And the
even
pastor,
though they're not legal citizens.
no, you could.
Well,
Currently.
I mean, I have a good friend who's a green card holder. He's
So
not a
not
legal
every-
citizen.
so not
He's not here
everyone-
illegally.
So not
People
everyone who is
dude, hang
is
on.
not a citizen.
If you have an F1 student visa, that's legal. If you have an H1B visa, there's all if you have a tourist visa, there's all kinds of people who are not citizens who are here legally. But no one is arguing that the 10 million who crossed the border under Biden are here legally. They didn't get any of that. And we don't know who they are.
I think
So
the
so I
assumption
don't-
is everyone that's not a legal citizen is here illegally. That's what I'm trying to make. So it's
No, I
when
don't
we
think
make
that's what-
these,
Yeah, I don't think I would say that.
we say immigration and we go, okay, you're not a legal citizen, so you should get out of the country.
What path
There
are they on?
some
Maybe is a better
broad
way to say it.
statements.
Are
That's
they on a
exactly
legal
right.
path or on the
That's
other?
a-
I
So
think
here-
Trump
here's
is
a-
prioritizing
I
the
say
people
I would
first,
probably-
last, enter.
I would probably go to a protest like No Kings because as a faith leader, our job is not to take a side, but to be a prophetic voice within our culture. And so
Prophetic voice for what?
that's exactly right. And I think for people, for moral approach to how we love
Is it
and care for
immoral?
individuals.
Is it-
Now, I mean, it was spoken in the Old Testament, which I know you love. You love the Old Testament and the law.
Of course I do.
And it the reality of welcome the stranger. I don't think there was any desire to be hostile towards people that are coming in. It's so maybe we can, as the church, now do we mix the church and the government and make them the same thing? And so as a faith leader,
Those
I
are
can't say that.
so much conflation going on.
Well, that's fine, but
No
we're
one's
a prophetic
arguing for
voice in
church
how
and this-
how we stand as Christians within the marketplace, and we can
one-
love
no
people.
One, no one is
fine.
saying people should be ill-treated. We're saying they should. How about? Would you agree with me that? What if I propose that America should have the same immigration policy as Mexico? Would you agree with that, or you think it should be different because we're different?
I think we should have the immigration policy in the U.S. that we agree on. That's
Well, by law, it's
desirable
basically the
for-
same. By law, it's basically the same
so
as Mexico.
regardless if it's the same or not as Mexico.
But do you understand my point that I can't go to Mexico and make the demands that someone from Mexico is coming to America and making? It's talk about unequal weights and measures.
Yeah.
It's totally different standards.
It's also ruled by the
Mexican
cartel,
president-
so it's a little different. I mean, are we ruled by the cartel and the drug mafia? But anyway,
But the
I
only
mean,
difference there is that Mexico is a less desirable place to go, but the rules remain the
Sure,
same.
no, I
Ken-
understand that.
I want Ken to get back to what he was going to say.
To answer your question about do my pastors protest and
Do you want them
do
to?
they welcome, feed, house undocumented migrants? A story that my pastor told a couple years ago was him going to a Home Depot parking lot and teaching the parable of the
Yeah.
tenants, right? Where he's going and just teaching day laborers, which is the parable of the
Yeah.
tenants, right? Feeding them like tortas because he hired like a torta company to come and just like feed everyone.
Nice.
And he wanted their opinions as day laborers on the story, right? A lot of them did feel, like you were saying, well, those that got here first have more of a right than the person that got here least, right? The story of laborers, right? Until there was one really cool guy that said like, gracia para mi hermanos, esta no like dano para mí, right? Like, which is not how he said it in Spanish, but like grace for my brothers is no harm for me.
Right.
Right. So that's how I do answer your question about the ones that got here first too. The pastor was not talking about that, but I do think it's kind of the
But
same
do you
situation.
think the story of the day laborers is about immigration?
No, but I think
Okay.
the principle behind it can be applied to immigration. That's
Huh.
my point.
Because I hear that story entirely about
Salvation.
yeah.
As all parables are, it's about the kingdom of God.
Yes, as all parables are, it's about the kingdom of God, but like the kingdom of God is here and it's not here yet, right? We are supposed to be bringing the kingdom of God to this earth. For me, and I'm an anarchist, so like I don't really want the government to do much about immigration at all. But I do think that a lot of people are going to feel like the early people that the early day laborers that worked
I
all
see what you're
day,
saying.
and then the people that came later, right, just getting granted immigration because
there are huge wars between illegal immigrants who have been here for 10 years and people who just showed up.
Yeah.
Because guess what? The people who just showed up will work for less than the people who've been here for 10 years.
And we had the same problem with the Irish and the
class
Italians,
system.
and we
Yes.
had the same problem. Yeah.
But by the way, I will say if you live by I said this before, if you live by the executive branch, you die by the executive branch.
Of course.
So the illegal immigrants that illegally came in under Joe Biden's watch while they looked the other way, you can't complain because the law didn't change.
Yeah.
No one passed a law that changed immigration law. None of the law changed. It's just choosing to enforce or not. The same laws were there. They just executive branch just, I would argue, ignored the law.
And all these first 100-day executive orders, they can get just like rubber stamped
Absolutely.
repealed next president. Like
Yes.
legislation is more permanent than
Which is
executive
why
orders. Yeah.
several Republicans are saying we need to codify the executive orders.
By the way, when you brought up the Old Testament, and I'm not going to get into this now, but the passages in the Old Testament about how to deal with foreigners and your neighbors and those sorts of things, we are going to be tackling that, I think, this November. We're going to finally do a big event on immigration, borders, nations, because those passages come up so often, and we just don't have the time to kind of delve in here. So stay tuned, go to our website, and come, I think, November, we're going to be finally tackling that, and it should be really interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
But maybe we should move on from this.
Okay,
This is a great conversation about that. Thank you for letting me bring this. to
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
table today.
And watch on your social media to see if you see Brandon at the next protest wearing a keffiyeh. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Okay, Ken, do you want to introduce the next? Or
Oh boy.
Oh, boy.
There is a rift in MAGA over the past week.
Yeah.
This Iran stuff is separating the America First people and the Trump loyalists. And a perfect example of that was the Ted Cruz Tucker Carlson interview that happened a couple days ago. In this, we had let's take the Christian perspective on the Iran-Israel situation. Ted Cruz is arguing from his Vacation Bible School days that he was always taught. Those
Sunday school.
Sunday school. Okay, sure. Sunday school days.
Vacation Bible School comes and goes.
It's only a week.
Sure. His Sunday school days that those who bless Israel are going to be blessed by God, and those that curse Israel are going to be cursed by God, and I want to be blessed by God. And Tucker Carlson's taking him to task.
That's your Cruz voice?
It's not a great
It
Cruz
passes for
impression.
Joel
That's
Osteen too, but
He's a Texas senator.
Okay.
And Tucker Carlson took him to task, and he's like, wait, do you think that applies to the Likud party or Netanyahu or the current
the nation.
governmental structure of
Yeah.
Israel? Or do you think that's about Abraham and his descendants? Which
Well, he didn't say that second part.
he
but
didn't
yeah.
say that, but that is the question that he's asking. And it's how
Neither
relevant.
one of them know enough about the Bible. to
Yeah,
really-
it's really
agree
the
with
blind
that,
and the blind.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Tucker Carlson will tell you he's an Episcopalian who's never learned the Bible at all. Was a cultural Christian. At
A
best.
vibes Christian.
Ted,
Vibes.
Ted Cruz, his dad has. I don't know if y'all know
Raphael
this.
Cruz, yeah.
I mean, there are JFK connections there.
Hey,
But,
take a drink,
I
take
just
a
wanted to say, he was in New Orleans in 1960.
Your dad killed JFK. Everyone knows your dad killed JFK.
No, no,
He
I'm
said
not-
that
no.
on stage.
I know. I'm not saying that at all. Quite the contrary. I think he was a Cuban who was probably anti-Castro, and there was
Yeah.
a lot of CIA anti-Castro because basically the CIA in the 60s was conservatives against communism.
An
But anyway,
informant is different than an agent.
for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm not saying he was an agent at all. Yeah. Anyway, Lee Harvey Oswald spent time with anti-Castro.
Oh my goodness. Focus, people. Focus.
Man, we got
but the
Netflix special coming.
I'm saying I think Cruz knows his Bible, but basically he's quoting God saying to Abraham, whoever blesses Abram at the time, I'll bless, and whoever curses you, I'll curse. So basically, God's like, I got your back, Abram. Okay, and that's
But he
Genesis
did call
12.
Abraham a nation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and if you want to apply it to Israel, that's fine. I think the question, though, of it's a very modern, probably dispensational question of whether or not modern day Israel has any theological significance at all.
Yeah.
And I think that was a divide that was like the presuppositional divide in this conversation, and it's a huge divide in our politics.
They didn't even
today.
know that's what they were arguing
Right.
about.
Well, I
Right.
think Tucker's follow-up question was those who bless the government of Israel,
Right.
or the
Right.
nation of Israel.
Let me
So
read-
yeah.
let me just-
what's the distinction when we're quoting that?
I
Scripture?
will say this is as good a political fireworks as I've seen in a long time. So if you haven't seen the interview, I do think it's worth watching.
fantastic.
I think they actually both gave as good as they got. But yes, actually, there's an article here from PJ Media that talks about how snarky Tucker Carlson is, and he's called out on it multiple times in the interview, and he admits to it multiple times. And I do think that in some ways he was a bad faith interviewer. And I think maybe in many respects he was a bad faith interviewer in this exchange, although I tend to agree with him. I think he's so frustrated that we just keep getting suckered into war after war after war, and like somebody's got to say. I think Ted Cruz, by the way, was disingenuous about AIPAC.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, yes, AIPAC represents the government of Israel, maybe in a kind of surreptitious way. But
I'm not touching you.
What is AIPAC for our listeners?
Yeah.
AIPAC is the American Israel Political Action something.
But it's only made up of Americans.
It's basically one of the biggest lobbying groups, Washington, D.C. Yeah. It's pro-Israel, and, and they give money to Ted Cruz, and so Carlson called him out for that. Let me just read the exchange, though, because to not make it all about politics, to keep it theological as we need to do, Cruz says, as a Christian growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. That's not a quotation in the Bible. Anyway, he says, from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things. Carlson says, those who bless the government of Israel.
Question mark.
I love it when interesting distinctions are made in conversations. He said, yes, I believe that. Carlson said, where is that? Cruz, I can't find it for you. Or I can find it for you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... pull it out my phone and use the... Anyway, Carlson says it's in Genesis, but you're quoting a Bible phrase that you don't know, have context for, and you don't know where it is in the Bible, but it's like your theology. I'm confused. So that's where Carlson starts to get really snarky. There were some gotcha questions in there.
Oh, yeah.
And
By
so
the way, the
not
actual quote from Genesis 3 is, I will bless
3
those
or
who
12?
bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. This is God talking to
Genesis
Abraham.
12.
Yes, Genesis 12.
And the verse before that is, I'll make you a great nation. The funny word for nation is just the word goy. It's just the Hebrew word for like people groups.
Yeah.
I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great.
Well, and what is Israel from a New Testament point of view?
Yeah, it's just
Descendants
descendants of
people of
one
God.
patriarch.
Yeah.
Well,
And
this is the age-old question.
Yeah, and I think that Christians are still under the Abrahamic covenant, but we're not under the Mosaic covenant. So there are like distinctions and covenants that you would need to make. Yes, Abraham is the father of many nations, and the Gentiles are those many nations.
Does that include the snip snip?
Well, Galatians answered that, of course not.
Okay, but that's part of the Abrahamic
Also,
covenant,
that's not
right?
what most people call the snip snip, but okay.
Well, we're under the
It's not
Abrahamic.
vasectomies.
Oh,
people.
yeah, I'm so sorry. The baby snip snip.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, again,
That's part of the Abrahamic covenant, right?
I don't know that it's demanded. I'd have to look into that. That's a
But
good
didn't he
question.
demand all this like servants do it too?
Yeah, I think it is demanded, but that's going
Yeah.
to have to be a conversation for another day.
Prescriptive or
Yeah,
descriptive?
yeah.
I'd have
But
to-
are you
Interesting,
talking about sort of the maledictory curse that God took on himself when he made the covenant with Abraham? Because that still applies. Like, if you screw this up, I will take it on myself. And that's what he did at the cross.
That's
and it's
what
what
he
he continues to do. So in that
Which
way, I think...
grafted in all of the
Yes.
rest. Yeah.
But here's my question. Like, that passage does exist in the Bible, and Ted Cruz might be a little bit confused about what it means. No, I don't think it means the government of Israel. But is there some sense in which we should be honoring, helping Israelites, Jewish people? Would that be a better way to say it? Like, not the nation, but the Jewish people? Like, is there
Probably.
some kind of blessing that comes with
One of my-
honoring God's people, even if right now they are?
One of my questions is giving Bibi Netanyahu everything he wants going to be a benefit or is going to have knock-on effects down the road for the people of Israel?
Give an example. What do you mean, give him what he wants? Like, finish the task in Iran?
In Iran or before this week, the Gaza stuff, right? Is that going to make their neighbors like more angry, or is it going to make them have, it's going to bring back the Abraham Accords?
Yeah.
I like the stuff going on right now.
complex, for sure.
It's very complex, and to say just like the Iran regime change, right? I know the Ted Cruz's, the Ben Shapiro's, they'll all say like, I know that regime change in Iran is going to be better than what we have now. And it's like, dude, we said that with Iraq.
Right.
We've said that with Libya. We said that with
Afghanistan.
Syria, and like now ISIS rebels are in charge of Syria.
And by the way,
so-
Ted Cruz said that the Soviet Union overthrow was essentially a regime change. So that was an interesting. Ted Cruz is kind of such a boomer, right? Because even quoting Ronald Reagan
Well,
at
hold
the
on.
Berlin Wall. Was,
Okay. So is Trump, because
Oh, Trump is totally a boomer.
so talking about Tucker, Trump is like, I mean, get a television show. You're not even on a network. You're not even on a network. Like, do you really have a real show? It's like, dude, he is the biggest conservative, influential.
You actually got
like,
that a little bit better. Than
he's
the
a
Cruz
big,
one.
the biggest conservative spokesperson in the world right now.
Yes.
Right. And like he got fired from Fox News for defending Trump on all the Dominion voting stuff. He got fired because he had Trump's back
Trump's a moron on that.
on the Dominion voting stuff. Got a bigger platform than he had back at Fox News, and now Trump is saying, "Yeah, but he's not even on real TV." So
right, right.
Even though, like, a lot of
even though,
stupid
like,
things.
his interview on Joe Rogan got like 1,000 million views or something.
and he went on Joe Rogan and all that.
I know,
Dude.
But to go
He's a
back to
boomer.
your point, do
Yeah.
we because of this covenant with God, do we bless Israel? But I think the part of the covenant is that all the nations will be blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does it look like to say we're going to bless Israel for Israel's sake, but is it because all the nations will be blessed,
Like,
or
blessed
just
through
so
them.
that Israel is taken care of?
Oh, it's not just for their own sake.
You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so will the Palestinian nation be
Right.
blessed? Will the, other nations next door to them be blessed? Or is
I mean,
it
that's
just,
the dream. It may be impossible.
And I think
but-
that's the question. If we're going to take it from that perspective, are we kind of using the whole council? of
Yeah, what about
Scripture to
Hagar's
kind of look at
kids?
that? Yeah.
They have the same blessing on them. Right?
They have a blessing. It's
Yeah.
not this. I mean, what do you mean?
I don't know if it's the same blessing.
Well, Hagar gets her own special-
I'll make of you
Hagar
many
being,
nations.
Hagar being the
Father of Ishmael.
father
I mean,
of Ishmael.
mother. Sorry.
Whoa.
Mother of
Yeah.
Ishmael. She was a woman.
Abraham goes outside of
great
his
segue,
marriage
Jordan.
with Sarah,
Mhm.
sleeps with Hagar, the maidservant of Sarah, and has Ishmael, who is, by the way, the kind of patron father of Islam.
That's my point. Is
Some
that
people
the
say.
people of Gaza
They say,
and the
don't
people of Israel and the Arabs in Israel, right? Like they all come from the same patriarch, right? That got this blessing. I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you.
So why don't they get along?
Well, in 700 AD, there was this dude.
Yeah, I was
We
going to
might
say.
talk about that. I
will
don't
say,
know.
I will say, I think there are distinctions to be made, like in terms of like, I think that we should have a special relationship with the modern nation state of Israel. I don't think that we should have the church has some special theological relationship to the nation state of Israel. I think the church has a unique relationship to the Jewish people. So those are all distinctions, like you made.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because we, unlike the Muslims, actually we actually do share, like a far fuller history.
Mhm.
But they reject the most important thing. That is, Jewish people reject the most important thing, like by far and away, like by a factor of 1,000, which is
Yeah.
that Christ is Lord and Messiah.
Yeah.
So do Muslims.
Well, yeah, but
But yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I'm not claiming a special relationship with Muslims.
That's
In fact, I would argue we have a hostile relationship with Muslims.
okay.
Because they have a hostile relationship to us. It's been that way. It was that way for hundreds and hundreds of years. And you could argue the Crusades.
Death to Americans, death to Israel.
Yeah. So anyway, it's complicated. Like I mean, like if you look at Luther alone, in 1520 he writes, or maybe 1523, that Jesus Christ was born a Jew, which was an unusually outreaching, loving document towards Jews to get them to understand that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the virulent anti-Semitism, for example, of Johannes Eck, who was his main debater in the Roman Catholic Church, they all hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Everyone hated the Jews. Now there was a lot of peace with Jews in Europe. That's a broad, complex thing. But I'm just saying theologically, there's a lot of hatred toward the Jews. Now, 20 years later, Luther is an old guy, and he sees Jewish people converting Christians into Judaism, which basically hardly
wild.
ever happens anymore, because most Jews who are ethnic Jews are atheists, really, in the modern world. I mean, probably half of modern day Israel are atheists or
Yeah.
secular Jews.
Yeah.
Only 15% or so are Orthodox Jews. So anyway, so those are complexities. I mean, I'm being a little snarky, but the Pride event in Tel Aviv was canceled due to the bombings from Iran, this last week. So Israel's a very, Tel Aviv is a very gay friendly city. It's a very secular state, and so just lumping it all together is So I do think we have special relationships in some way. I think having them as a Democrat ally in that part of the world is a good thing. I think we should leverage that. But Ted Cruz, I think, is wrong in basically using the Bible to justify America's special relationship with Israel
That's
to
right.
the
I think we all agree.
extent that we give Israel $3 to $4 billion a year,
treatment,
like clockwork. And
Not to mention the
Tucker's
weapons.
point was, and
What'd
the
you say?
weapons.
Not to mention the weapons.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, cash plus other things, which was part of the debate. And
Yes.
Tucker says they spy on us. And Ted Cruz's point was like, well, everyone spies on everybody.
Well, and Ted Cruz is saying they spy for us as well.
Yeah. But they don't share all their information.
Okay, but if Israel, forget the connection because of the Bible, but if Israel is our ally, what are we to make of what's happening right now in Iran? We have to talk about it. I mean, it's pressing and we're here.
Come on.
Oh, for sure.
Y'all see that old movie War Games?
No,
With
actually.
Matthew Broderick. Yeah.
Sometimes the right choice is not to play, right?
Well, are we playing right now? Tell me how.
We are giving Israel the bombs to send to Iran.
Okay, but that
Well, I
was
think we're
happening
also
prior to when they
calling for
decided.
Sure.
I think the president is reaching out to Iran and saying, you need to stop.
Stop what? Making nuclear weapons?
What do they call it?
Or
Unconditional
surrender.
Right.
Yes.
Surrender. So we're playing.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we're
We don't have boots
we're
on the
playing
ground,
in a
but
way
We
that
play
we're
in
saying-
everything because we're by far the biggest military on earth.
Yeah, why did we send aircraft
Yeah.
carriers and tons of bombers like over there last week?
Well, it's part of gamesmanship.
Mhm.
You know, basically, it's part of saying,
It's chess.
"Hey, well, it's even checkers." I mean, it's like it's like, yo, we can do this. We will do this thing. It's leverage to get you to unconditional surrender. So,
But is that wrong?
But hold on, that's exactly what the problem with Egypt was in the was it the 6 Day War, the Yom Kippur War, where they were moving troops, they were like blustering, right? But they did not actually cross the border, and Israel took that as a sign of aggression. And this is kind of the same thing with America, right? The antagonism between America and Iran does definitely go both ways. It's death to Israel, and like it's turn it all into glass,
right.
right?
Well, that's what
death
they
to
said.
Israel, death to America.
That's
But
it.
why?
That's Iran's problem. Like
Mhm.
we have a good justification for saying you don't get to have
That
nukes,
was the
sorry.
why.
Of
Yeah.
course,
Because they've said death to Israel. They said it shouldn't
There's
exist.
a
It should be
threat.
wiped off
There's
the
a
map.
Definite
So
threat there. Sure.
what I
see it.
think Trump wants to accomplish, and it probably is naive, and we've heard this before, and his own base is skeptical. No Democrats are opposing military intervention. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Wait. Ben Shapiro just said you're on AOC's side, Tucker Carlson. AOC agrees with you, and like
Okay.
who? Lindsey
okay,
Graham
two.
agrees with
Two.
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, no
like,
one
what are you
likes
talking
Lindsey
about?
Graham. Okay.
Two, but
Like-
by and large, Democrats have become the pro-war party.
Yes.
I mean, since Obama, right? I mean, he
But
can't-
continue your thought.
Okay,
Sorry.
My thought was I think what Trump wants to do is these kind of sites to get rid of the nuclear issue
Yeah.
and then, leave. I think that's what he's hoping will
I
happen.
mean, he said it 4,000 times.
Yeah.
Since before he was even ever elected.
So that's being kind of optimist and putting him in the best possible light. I don't think he would in a million years. I don't think he would in 100 years put American troops on Iran soil.
I don't think he wants a forever war. I don't think he wants
Yeah.
to do nation build
So I'm kind of on the trust Trump,
until he proves otherwise.
So
right.
nation building is different than regime change. Right? Trump was very vocal against regime change until recently, and now he seems to be
Was
on
he?
the nation building thing. Yeah.
Okay, regime change by us or by them? Like if we open things up just enough for them to have their own regime change,
Is
that
what
wouldn't be
Ted
the
Cruz
worst
said.
thing in the world, would it?
I mean, like, okay, would the Syrian civil war have gone a different way had we only funded the rebels and not actually put American boots on the ground, right? It might have gone the same way and gotten the exact same effect.
Yeah, but to me, what's interesting about this is Cruz saying we're couching this biblical principle to support Israel, but we don't want to get involved in some other wars where there's warring nations coming at each other because maybe there's not as much to gain from this relationship.
Yeah, that gets
not
dicey.
just politically, but financially, all of those things. And so it's kind of more like, okay, we're good with supporting Israel right here, and we might even make claims that we don't want missiles to go down and innocent lives to get lost, and and our troops, blah blah blah. But hey, in Gaza, they're hiding terrorists in hospitals. So let's just blow up the whole hospital to get the terrorists. But we don't want that to happen in this Iran-Israel situation.
Well, but there is something
and
different
that's
happening.
quoted in this. I
Yeah.
understand that, but it's kind of like
Using the
there's more to
religious-
gain, using the religious thing.
That's kind of gross.
But the truth is, it's a different thing that we're trying to gain out of that relationship with Israel, and so we just have to admit that.
We
And
have to
that's
call it what
I-
it is.
That's what
Yeah.
I don't like about some of these, as far as when we start incorporating faith
Yeah.
within this conversation, because just because it's Israel, now we're going to layer on some biblical theology on this.
How about this though? Take out the
We didn't
Genesis
when it
passage.
was,
And what about applying a passage like true religion is protecting the orphans and the oppressed? I mean, the women orphans and widows. I can't remember the rest of that verse.
James.
Those who design. Yeah, it's in James. I mean, Iran is an oppressive terrorist state. I think there is something different about this situation than maybe some of the others.
Then
I'm-
Russia.
Or North
Ukraine
Korea
or somewhere.
Well,
Like-
North Korea, I think, would
North
maybe fall in the
Korea.
same
Yeah.
boat, except are they, quote, close to having a nuclear weapon? If you take those two things, a terrorist, horrible, oppressive regime that, by the way, funded and organized the Hamas attacks, which I'm still not over, by the way. I mean,
Yeah,
those
I
were
understand.
horrifying. You take them and you compare them to someone that doesn't have any nuclear weapons and is just
Who would
But
that be though?
By the same argument, you've given Iran the same justification that we get. So, for example, you're saying Iran funded Hamas, which invaded Israel
Yeah.
and did October 7th. But now we are funding Israel that is bombing Iran right now. And now they have a justification against us, right? Do you see how the same justification works both ways?
no, because
No.
I think
Okay.
one went after innocent people and one is going after I think there's a good guy, bad guy.
Yeah.
I think for sure there's a good guy, bad guy.
No, I definitely agree. Like the only difference between like Iran and Israel is that Israel like has a. I'm not going to actually target civilians, and like Iran, if they had a nuke, I agree. Like Israel would probably be gone.
Israel would be gone. America would be.
But so
I
would
hear what
probably
you're saying,
Iraq.
though. Here's the deal: we want to push against evil in the
Yes.
world, right? But do we classify there's a greater evil and a lesser evil? So we're good with this evil, but we're
Yes,
not good
we
with
do.
this evil,
Yes,
and
you have
that's
to-
that's
yes.
kind of the deal that we have to say we're going to prioritize
Yes.
the evil that is this terrorist evil that's oppressive, but we're not going to prioritize this evil that
Well, yes,
traffics. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
no,
Like,
first of all, I think we should go after all evil,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I do.
but-
we have to
but you should-
prioritize it just because we have to
Right.
have some logic. And when you
but-
have
but
somebody
you have government leaders that saying what America first, and is this America first movement? To go after
if they say death to
Iran.
America, and let's just say for the sake of
Did they
argument
say
that they
death
act.
to
Oh my
America?
gosh,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's their slogan.
All the
yes.
time.
Their slogan is "Death to Israel, death to America."
America is the big Satan, or Israel's the big Satan, or America is.
We're both Satan.
One of
okay?
them's a little- one of us is the big
hear
Satan,
that,
one of
but
us the little Satan.
Anyway, at what point is that threat lost? Because are they anyway?
Well, I would say how many threats have we made to Iran, right?
Well,
you
I'm
can
just
find a
answering your
dozen
question about it being
congressmen.
America first. And yes, I think we should go after evil in the world. And when that evil has the potential for a nuclear weapon, we prioritize them.
Yeah.
Not to mention, in this situation, we're doing very little compared to. I mean, we're really kind of just sitting back and going, yeah, and rooting on Israel.
So from a geopolitical standpoint, yes, right?
yeah, I'm not talking
because-
about a religious standpoint.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. I think we look at this not from let's layer this from the covenant we have with Israel as Christians.
We've all agreed on that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's a geopolitical thing, and I know we've all agreed on it. But what I'm saying is, it's going to come up again.
Okay.
We're a
And-
little America's a little more couched in our like aggression, but like y'all saw the Huckabee text, right? That Trump
Yes.
leaked, where it's like, not since President Truman
I
has
know.
in 47 has anyone had the opportunity that you have, Trump. It's like, what is it? Yeah, he's not saying the quiet part out loud, but he's definitely saying it quietly.
Yeah.
Right? You could nuke Iran, like Tehran could be
Just
glass
end this.
right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's not saying death to America or death to Iran, but like, I mean, it's pretty aggressive.
I guess I would ask this: if Iran wants nukes for leverage, just like the same reason everyone else. They probably don't want to nuke Israel. That might just be red meat they give to their. I don't know.
Well, the question is, would they?
But I think it's a reasonable ask given what they've said publicly about death to Israel and Satan's and all that. I think it's a reasonable ask to say shut down your nuclear capacity.
Don't enrich uranium
And
beyond
if they
40%.
did that, would we be in this war right now? No, we would not. I do
Yeah.
think, by and large, Iran brought it on themselves. I mean, I would probably be happy if Israel was on their own in this and we weren't participating at all. I think that's how most of MAGA feels because I think we are so war weary. But I would point out again that so much criticism is lobbed toward Trump and toward MAGA when really the only debate about this is within MAGA. So the intellectual framework and conversations, the split that everyone's talking about is only within MAGA. The left is like out there like watching, like basically either I guess they're all nihilists. They don't have a point of view about it. They're all in favor of it. I just think that's interesting.
It is interesting.
Kind of pointed out that if you do look at, by the way, I enjoyed that video you sent me. The coalition of MAGA is so diverse and interesting, and it's all these different factions, everyone from RFK to Curtis Yarvin to Steve Bannon, et cetera. And I think that's a good thing. And there's a lot of intellectual debate, and there's a heat map, by the way. If you look at intellectual diversity on the right, it's very diverse. It's all over, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I think in the broad sense of things, that's a good sign that there are these debates about exactly when we participate and how and so on and so forth. That wasn't the case in the early aughts, right? When it was Muslim bad, bomb country.
Mhm.
and everyone was like,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
I think that's progress.
I feel like there's
that's
a
a white
lot of those
pill.
people
I found a
still
white
here.
pill.
I feel like there's a lot of those people
All
still
right, we
here.
gotta.
All right, let's do
know.
some. Let's do
If
some.
you're only
I see
listening and
you.
not watching, you won't know why Brandon's laughing. But continue. We got to move on.
Let's do some quicker hits. This was a
Yeah.
funny, I thought, a tweet. This is a New York Times, or it's a Harris poll, and there was a New York Times article. It was tweeted by a lot of people. But here's the question that the poll asks. When I think about my child's experience growing up, I wish blank had never been invented. And so there's all kinds of interesting answers. At the very top of the list, not surprisingly, is mature online content. Right? You can imagine why parents wouldn't want that. At the very bottom of the list
Sorry.
is bicycles.
don't understand
9% of the people. Now, I'm guessing people could give multiple answers, but 9% of the, like, why wouldn't you want a bicycle? Is it because people get hit by bikes?
I think maybe it might be parents of people, like, those white bikes you see on the side of the road. Right.
okay,
I think
yeah,
it
yeah,
might be
right.
parents of those people or family members of people. That,
But
it's
like they
weird.
were invented in like what 1812? I mean, what like like
I
how far
was
back are we
laughing
going to go?
because I
wish the wheel had never been invented.
I was recalling the
Fire.
story with my son. He was so frustrated when he was learning to ride his bike. He felt so many times. He said, "I'm just going to give up." And the only thing that got him to ride a bike was I said, "I'm going to get you something at Sonic." He's like, "I'm in." So he rode his bike that day. But it's like maybe because it's hard that we actually have to like participate with our kid to help them learn to ride the bike.
Like
So,
it's a laziness thing?
or they get hurt as a result of riding a bike. But it's like, but we're good with we're good with video games
Right,
and
right.
all those
It's
other
such
things.
a
that-
time capsule because video games is so low on the list.
Right.
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 But
Well,
I kind of agree with the list. I mean, as I'm looking at it, I mean, this is kind of how I don't know if it's exactly how I would put it. I wouldn't put
but like
guns second.
guns, like you wish guns had never been invented. It's like the single most important invention in mankind's history. Like, how are you going to walk that back? What are you going to do? Be like, well, there's a 9mm, in my neighborhood. That's bad. Okay, well, the Revolutionary War was fought with muskets. So what are you going to do?
I don't know. If this is a genie gives you whatever you want and you get to snap your fingers and do it, like, I'd probably say guns too.
Well, there's still
Why
other
not?
weapons before guns were invented.
Sure.
I don't know.
So-
Yeah,
I think I would
you
have
ever
put
been beaten
TikTok
to death
way
by a hammer?
above guns.
Yes.
I think I would have put TikTok way up there.
Well, when you
Above
say
It was,
guns,
it was third though. So.
are you talking about like a projectile from a combustible, right? I would imagine you would have to get real simple
Yeah.
with the.
Well, so
Like
like
bows
six
and
of
arrows?
them are basically apps, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
TikTok, X, Snapchat,
Yeah.
Instagram, social
Snapchat.
media. Well, they're all social media, and Facebook, then Chat GPT, and then smartphones underneath. I'm like, get rid of the smartphone and get rid of the apps.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Get rid of all this.
So
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, in an education system, it's the smartphone is necessary
Now.
in fifth grade now.
I didn't
But
have
it
one.
doesn't
Explain.
have to be.
Well, you
I didn't have one, and I'm pretty
but
smart.
it's necessary now. Well,
Let's take a poll on how smart we think. No,
I'm in agreement with that, but it's like, how do you do life as a kid when it's all digital?
You go back
and
20 years and do it
utilizing
without
apps
that.
like that. But I agree. So I see why parents would say, "I
Yeah.
wish this was never invented."
Yes.
because then it's like we could have had a whole different experience for our children.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I tend to agree that social media is poison for kids.
what was your answer to the? Like, I want to hear everyone's answer. Your kids or the kids in your community. How would you answer? What's
I think the top one is the best.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
something
which
could
is say it again for our audience.
well, it's mature online content.
Porn.
Pornography.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And so so actually, and something could be done about this. A
Yeah.
lot of things could be done about this. So like,
100%.
unlike something like TikTok, which is like, I don't know, intellectual property and like, defended, by the First Amendment and so on and so forth. And guns, I think, could arguably be necessary for self-defense. And bicycles are awesome. Like, hello, every
Yeah.
my best day ever was like when I got my bicycle. Come
It's
on.
like a lost art in our
Yeah.
society now.
Anyway, but yeah, like you could do age verification. I think you could, bring back decency laws. I think
we should just make it all the way illegal.
absolutely 100% porn should
So
be illegal.
what's the statement now if it's like riding a bicycle? What do
Right,
you say
right,
now?
right, right, yeah.
It's like, anyway.
Right. It's like playing Fortnite.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It just
You just
Comes
pick it
right
up,
back to you.
comes
20
right
years
back
later,
up.
you pick
Yeah,
up a
yeah,
controller, you're right
Oh
there.
my gosh.
Okay, let's go on.
Well, speaking of making porn illegal, which I think we should, here is, in my estimation, a win. So this white pill writes itself. You may have heard that yesterday, or I guess by the time this airs, 2 days ago, the Supreme Court ruled on this Tennessee law. So Tennessee made a law to protect minors against all kinds of transgender everything, from puberty blockers to hormone therapy to actual surgeries, they took it all off the table for minors, which they should. And come for me if you think that's not how it should be, and we'll talk. But then it went up to the Supreme Court because the question was, are transgender people a protected class, basically? And will this be violating their civil rights? And of course, the answer came down, and I think Justice Clarence Thomas and what's her name? The lady. Oh my gosh, Amy
Coney Barrett.
Coney Barrett. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wrote the paper saying no. For a protected class, it needs to be something. They make some distinctions, but basically, it has to be either immutable or. I won't go into the details. The point is that this is a good thing, and hopefully, because of this Supreme Court ruling, other states can make the same laws to protect their children. I mean, I don't think anybody should be doing this, but especially for children, given they don't even have a fully formed brain to be able to make such decisions. Anyway, that's it. I mean, I think this is really great news, and I think we should celebrate the wins. And I am not maybe as much of a woo-woo Trump person as some other people in the room, but this would be an example of something where I am very glad that he was president. Because of his presidency, we have a Supreme Court that is not crazy sauce and could make this decision. Anyway, that's my thoughts. What do you guys think?
It's going to take a ton of carve outs, right? Like, y'all know what the most common gender affirming surgery is, right?
I assume it's puberty blockers.
Well, surgery.
Breast
Right?
removal?
Yes. On young boys with gynecomastia. Yes. It outnumbers the top surgeries on young girls by a
Are you talking about
landslide.
like guys with man boobs?
Well, with hormone.
Like Meatloaf in Fight Club? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
But like, yeah, young boys with hormone problems that develop breasts and get plastic surgery for it. Like, it's night and day the difference between like young boys getting this. So you gotta specifically tailor legislation. Otherwise, there's going to be a bunch of, because it's gender affirming care. I want to look more like a boy, right? I want to, but
Technically.
I think that would pass
Actually,
my-
there's already language in here that it can't go against, like it has to match your sex at birth.
okay.
So I don't think that's going to
So look
actually
more
be an
like
issue.
a boy.
Right.
Works.
I
As
do-
long as
I
that
do-
language is in there. Yeah.
It
I
is.
do appreciate learning that stat though. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's so interesting because it is like in old dudes on TRT, right? Testosterone replacement therapy.
Like
It's
RFK Jr.
like RFK Jr.
Yeah.
Like that's gender affirming care.
Yeah.
You want to look more like
Every
a,
woman in menopause too.
You wanna look more like a dude.
So we
And
agree
man
that the
opposed.
thing is, what is gender? You know,
There we
and,
go.
And so if gender is
Yeah.
the same as sex, essentially, and that's our argument, then
Right.
yeah, that's fine. Gender affirming. We're not opposed to gender affirming care. We are opposed to someone in their mind thinking
Changing.
they're the other sex and then calling that gender
Yeah.
affirming
I
care
just
by
think
doing
Yeah.
brutal damage to one's body.
Yes.
So-
Not
Agreed.
affirming.
but I
just
agree.
think-
It is a very big win, and if you kind of just look back at how far we've come, I think it's
Yeah.
good.
I'm actually I appreciate your comment about kids being fully formed to make those decisions themselves.
For sure.
And I'll be interested to see what pushback from parents there might be on this decision because parents are they influencing the decisions
Yep.
of their children and then saying the children are making the decisions on
Yep.
their
Oh, for
own.
sure.
You see what I'm saying? And so what's the pushback going to look like?
Yeah,
on this
but all that's going
ruling
to do is
from-
shine a spotlight on the nasty,
Right.
influencer mom type, that wants their child to be the other sex so they can have the spotlight. Anyway,
I mean, it's already true that there's
Yeah.
so many other places in our culture where we would say children are not equipped to make this decision.
yeah, they can't even drink until they're 21. I mean,
drive till they're
Yeah,
16.
drive till they're 16.
I think our next debate needs to be whether anyone at any age should get gender
That's right.
affirming care in the sense of changing one's.
Well, don't even
sex.
call it
Well,
gender
I-
affirming
yeah,
because
right,
it's
right,
not.
right,
It's actually
right.
what's
Sex
the opposite
changes.
of affirming?
Sex
Just
changes.
affirming.
Yeah.
And this is the anarchist's biggest problem is like, well, what do you do about the kids? Not even like, third parties like assaulting kids, but like parents that do harm to their own kids, right?
Yeah.
It's like no anarchist has an answer for that. The ones that are utopian are completely out of their minds. And like, honestly, the state hasn't done a good job either. Like kids are getting abused all over the world and it's just heartbreaking. And it's just, nobody has a good answer for this and it breaks everyone's heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that black pill.
I'm sorry.
Well, the white
maybe
pills-
the white pill is that you shouldn't be an anarchist. Hey,
Well-
I'm joking.
Okay, quick hit. This was a basically a study that looks at AI usage, and this was actually in England, and the percentage of people using AI for like plagiarism is off the charts. And I don't think there's a lot to say about it, except kind of what do we do about it. I've seen a lot of articles like this recently. I think we had one that we didn't get to a few weeks back, but basically, AI is being used. ChatGPT and others are being used by a large percentage of students. And so, what's the answer? Well, I said I had the screenshot in our group chat December of 2022 when I heard about what ChatGPT was. It was kind of new at the time. I said we need to go to oral exams.
Yeah.
Now, basically, or in the chat also I think said make pencils great again. So yeah, let's go back to you got to write something, with your pencil.
But given that,
while
I
on a
thought
bike.
that, but
No.
in this
In
article,
a little blue notebook.
In this article, this professor says it's unfeasible to move every single assessment a student takes to in person.
I mean,
That's sad.
I just can't stand the way people think. Like
that's
it's
in the education.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible to do education the way we did for 1,000 years.
No,
Right.
we
But
haven't
I
done
thought that was
education this
so-
way for 1,000 years.
What?
Oh yeah.
Oral exams?
Oral exams. I'm sorry.
he's
I thought
saying-
you meant the Prussian model of
No.
make good little soldiers and factory workers.
Have it. Go visit Oxford. Find one of those beautiful little rooms with like pews and like wood floors and
Watch Little House on the
I got you,
Prairie.
I got
Yes,
you.
and then be like, John Smith, you're up. You have 5 minutes to explain blank. And basically, it's there could be 20 topics that he could cover. He has to know all of them and be able to give a 5-minute speech on all of them. Like, do it. Like, make it happen.
Yes, it's a jab, but I don't think Trump passes Wharton if that happens.
Yeah.
By the way, even in
possible.
He
college.
didn't have his Wharton degree.
I don't
Fine.
if you have oral
Does he
exams, I don't
pass?
think he passes.
Oh, funny. Even in college, I had to do, I don't know if it was the CLEP test or something else, where I had to do multiple written essays.
Oh,
And that wasn't that long. I'm not that old.
My American history
Yeah.
courses were all the little blue book.
Little blue
and,
books,
and multiple topics. I had to be well
You
versed
get
in.
writer's cramp.
Yes.
Absolutely. I
With that
had
little
writing
callus on your
for an hour
fingers.
straight, multiple essays. Like, I mean, it was good enough for me.
Cool thing about my business law class is that you had 3 assignments for the whole semester, and the professor gave them to us on day 1. It's like, here's your book, here's your 3 assignments. I'm going to be teaching from the book. You could turn them in tomorrow if you wanted to.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I thought. I mean, in this article specifically, though, the thing that is probably really important for us. It's one of the things is knowledge and how to kind of communicate that knowledge that we learn, right? And apply that knowledge. But skills that can't be easily replaced by AI, I thought that was interesting, such as communication skills, people skills, and giving students the confidence to engage with emerging technology and to succeed in the workplace. So it's not like AI is replacing everything. Because studies would say 70% of what we learn is outside the classroom. If that's the case, AI is not replacing all of that, but it is taking a place, and we're maybe teaching that we can just steal someone else's idea and call it our own. I get that.
Well, and then put people out in the world that can't do those other things.
Right.
Like I remember, taking classes where I had to stand at the front of the class and explain something, which then you're working on your confidence, you're working on your social anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And so now if you're leaving high school never
Kinda like
having
the
to
first
have
time
done
coming
that.
on a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Oh, great.
Are you being formed?
That's great.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Have we created a welcoming environment? It's the Thunderdome, so I don't really care if I did or not, actually.
We'll poll him after the fact and ask him. Anyway.
Okay, there's
Speaking of
another.
being smart.
So there's a guy. Apparently, he's got a 276 IQ. I didn't even think
That's not even
IQ
a
went over
thing.
150.
160, but yeah.
Okay.
The Mensa Society, yeah.
Okay, so there's this genius, and he I guess is a Christian now. He says Jesus Christ is God, the way, the truth, and the life. I believe that Jesus Christ is God, the way, the truth, and life. He says he's from South Korea. He points to quantum physics to support his belief in God and the afterlife. He was recognized by the Giga Society in April 2024 as having the highest IQ in the world at 276. And so my question is basically, who cares?
Oh my gosh.
That's
shocking.
Yeah, well, I do think that there is this thing that this rut Christians get into where it's like, oh, a celebrity's a Christian? Wow, it validates us. Oh, a smart person is a Christian? Wow, it validates us. Bro, he is going to be in heaven with the peasant who never could read and write, all the same, and eternal life's a lot longer than now. Yeah. So that is my concern, that Christians are thirsty for validation from the outside world.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is where's faith in the midst of that? It's like, oh, I figured it out. I'm
It's
a
a great
brain
equalizer.
rock, and I can say I know exactly that this is true because I'm smart enough to know that.
I've pieced it
That's
all together.
all about you. You're now in the center of that whole situation, not your faith. what does that look like if, it was just depending on me being smart enough to figure this out.
Well,
But I'll push
all
back
right.
a little bit on Evan because I don't think it's just that it validates us. It's that we're hopeful that it will influence other people.
Yeah.
If you have someone that is that smart, that people trust smart people, they trust the science, right? And so if you have someone that is scientifically smart and they come and say, listen, I've thought about this and I've arrived here, then maybe it opens it up for other people to say, oh, I'll consider this. It's not just a sort of a silly thing. It's not blind faith, which is not what you're saying.
No.
So I think it's kind of cool.
I'm with Evan on this one. The
Yeah?
evangelical community flocking to like the Jordans Peterson, all the Russell's brand, all of the newest, latest Christian fad. Just for validation, just for like, hey, this person's on my team. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Well, it to me, it's almost as if we need that to speak for us and not for ourselves.
Well, going back to the AI thing,
Yeah.
learn to talk for yourself, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Sure.
Because this genius, which I only even know about because Evan sent this out, I wouldn't have known about this otherwise. But because he claims that Jesus is real and king, doesn't mean that mine is any different. I still believe that. I still talk to people about that. But if I had someone come to me and was like, my biggest obstacle is it's just like science seems to say otherwise, then yeah, maybe I could say like, well, look at this scientist who says that he believes. I think that's just, it's another tool in our toolbox. I don't think it's like the end all be all. And if this guy, recants his faith tomorrow, it doesn't do anything to hurt mine.
We had this chat about Neil deGrasse Tyson on our group chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, about like
A very dumb, smart guy.
it's easier to train a smart dog than a dumb dog, right? Some very smart people can fall for some really dumb stuff. This guy is on the Jesus bandwagon. I just want to point out one thing about this guy. The Giga Society is like he founded and chaired by him.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
the Obama
They're like,
meme where
now
he's
IQ
handing a
goes
medal
to
to
wait,
himself.
wait.
The guy who, this
The society that gave him
What's his name? His name is
Yoon
Kim.
Hoon Kim, yeah.
Okay.
And
So
yeah, Mensa doesn't.
super smart.
Okay.
Yeah, Mensa doesn't
Well,
give
that
IQs
shows
above
he's actually
60.
very smart.
Okay.
No, he's a really smart guy. He does pass
yeah.
tons of like memorization and pattern recognition things, which are usually aligned with like IQ.
Yeah.
But there is not a granting IQ society that goes above one.
okay.
Because like y'all familiar with like bell curves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? You get
100
is
100
the-
is at the top.
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You get so many standard deviations away.
Yeah.
Like it's unmeasurable because you don't have a sample size in that small region.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't even measure above 160.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took an IQ test this week.
Oh.
Oh, do you want to say
Come on,
for all of our
Evan.
listeners?
Evan.
I would
Is it
never
over
do that.
100? I'm joking. Of course it is.
I would never say.
Is it
Anyway.
200?
No.
It's
Did
200.
you ask the Giga Society?
Actually, it's 276.
That's what I was
No, it's 277.
I feel so validated.
277.
My faith is validated now.
Anyway, I will say this though. So you mentioned Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand. I think those are two interesting examples, but very different.
Very different.
Assuming Russell Brand is legit, and I think he is.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, the reason I wouldn't is because he's getting away from the allegations.
That's exactly why I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Well, but I mean, I think he's had a change of heart. He was publicly baptized. He's talked about Christianity a lot. There were some things he sold this thing he wore that people said it sounded really superstitious and dumb, but it was just like it was like something to keep like electric,
He's
waves.
woo-woo.
EMFs.
Yeah.
Like, so it was a little woo woo, but like it wasn't like it's called like an amulet, and people are like, oh, he's pagan again. Like anyway, that
Sure.
I looked more into that, and I was like, that's fine, I can live with that as a Christian. Whereas Jordan Peterson has never made a confession of
No.
Christ. He's not been baptized. And he went on the Jubilee thing. In
The
fact,
Jubilee thing is embarrassing.
I preached about this, and I have several Jordan Peterson fans that were like literally like, and they're probably listening to this right now, and they're kind of like mad at me. They thought I was, but my point was Jubilee put him as 1 Christian verse 20 atheist, and they literally had to change the title because
Yeah.
he's not a Christian.
No.
Because
he's
he
never-
told one of the
Yeah.
people, well, how do you know I'm a Christian? And
Yeah.
it's like, that's the whole thing in this debate.
So I think they're different. Now I hope Jordan Peterson comes to
around.
make a profession of Christ, but he really hasn't done that yet, and he kind of
Why do you hope that?
But I'm not talking
Wait,
about him.
wait.
for his own soul.
Yeah. So why do you not care if this guy is?
Well, because that's a good question. I hope. Actually, I think Jordan Peterson's arguments would be improved a lot if he became a Christian.
Interesting.
Because he keeps coming. Temple's the same way. They keep coming against this, like they're like 80, 90% of the way there, and then like when you need something like divine command theory, or if you need some grounding from your point of view, they don't have it.
Yeah.
And so they end up in the same place your average, your village atheist ends up, which is preferences, which is human experience, human
Utilitarianism,
flourishing,
yeah.
utilitarianism. Like they can't sign the deal.
Finish it. Yeah. Close the
And
circuit.
so I think that they would be, if they're going to be public figures anyway, then I'd rather them be confessing Christians.
Would you rather scientists be Christians because that would help their science?
I'd rather everyone be a Christian.
Great. So then you're happy this guy is a Christian.
I am happy.
Yeah.
and you've changed your mind.
I am happy he's a Christian, but here's my concern. There is a flip side of this, which is,
What?
I got to understand quantum physics to believe in God.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what Brandon was saying.
Whenever, in fact, I was just listening to, y'all know who David Platt is? He
Oh,
took
yeah.
over-
Yeah.
Okay. And so he took over a church from a guy who was like a scientist who came to faith. And that was like a big, charisma of that church was like people who were like super smart in Washington, D.C. and good at science could believe in Christ because their pastor, like apologetically, had come to it through this intellectual process. Okay, fine. What about the person who doesn't understand the natural sciences and so on and so forth? Then it's like, well, I need to get a PhD in quantum physics to understand like the complexity of God. It's like, no,
Right.
you don't.
No, you don't.
So the Frank Turek axiom goes both ways. If y'all don't know Frank Turek,
Yeah.
he's a
I don't have enough
apologist,
faith
right?
to be an atheist.
Well, not that. They've never been talked into their faith, which is why they're so easily talked out of it. But I would say that cuts both ways.
Yes.
Because you're saying
Yes.
if all you're doing is being talked into your faith, then you can easily be talked out
Well,
of it.
that's what Brandon was saying.
And what you were saying
There's not a
earlier, yeah.
faith piece of there. There's
Right.
that intellectual.
That's
I
right.
got
Why-
here.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I'm post-apologetic because
Ultimately hopeful.
I like orthopraxy more than orthodoxy. So
well,
I don't. Again, they're not mutually exclusive.
they're not mutually exclusive,
no,
but
He's just saying he likes one more than the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it sounds. Sorry, but I think that
Yeah, it
sounds
does.
sort of pretentious. Like
Yeah, sure.
I like doing the right thing, but why do you do the right thing? Because you believe something, right? Praxy is in practice. Orthodoxy is what you believe.
Whoa,
I mean, this is the whole James debate, right?
Yeah.
Show me your faith by your works, I'll show you your faith. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Anyway,
we've got-
well,
we've got some hard outs, so I know we do need to go.
yeah.
So Ken, give us your patented line that we said you would say earlier.
I'm Ken. You can find me at Theology by the Pint. I'm not telling you jokers where I work.
And the next Theology by the Pint is actually going to
August.
be in August in the Woodlands. And I'm giving you plenty of time now so you can chart your course. It's very far away for many of us, but you can do it. And it's going to be spicy. It's going to be about who goes to heaven. Do all paths lead to heaven? Do all paths lead to God or to truth? So the title of it is Do I Have to Go to Church to Go to Heaven? Come and find out.
Let's
Anyway,
go.
what about you? Who are you? Where can people find you?
So I'm Brandon Baca. You can find me on social at Brandon Baca.
BACA.
All one word. Yes.
Say your church
BACA.
again. Your church website.
Our church is the Bridge Fellowship in Sugar Land, Fort Bend County. We have a couple locations. Come visit if you like.
Yeah,
Reach out to me on social and ask me questions. I'd love to have that conversation. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Sarah Stone. You can find me at all our events or on theologybythepint.org. I also lead a women's Bible study. I don't ever say that, but I do. And so if you're a woman in the Houston area and you want to come, we're studying Genesis right now. And it's about to get super spicy. We're getting into Genesis 6.
So you just did
know what I mean?
Revelation, then you went all the way back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there were so
Yes.
many tie-ins, they asked if we could start at the beginning.
What is
and
this
the
tree of
end,
life
and then-
thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm Evan McClanahan, pastor at First Lutheran, flhouston.org. Thanks for watching so much. It was fun. And Brandon, great to have you today.
Yeah. Thanks.
But until next time, we encourage you to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.
Peace.